Welcome. In this video I'm gonna show you the 5 strategies to prevent tear out even when planing in very difficult timbers, and that's gonna be very useful to get the best possible surfaces straight from your plane, okay? Many experienced woodworkers think there are some things that cannot be done with a hand plane. For instance, planing a surface like this one. If I turn this around, you will see there are many patches of tear out. That's from the machine, and yet I've been able to get this sort of perfect finish straight from my hand plane. Then we just put a couple of coats of oil to enhance these beautiful chatoyance in this timber. This is an exotic timber, and you can see all the fibers are going in every possible direction, so most people could not even try to plane this, but you can do that, and it's not so difficult. So let me show you the 5 strategies to prevent tear out. I say 5 strategies, it's actually 5 plus 1, okay, because there is one previous consideration which is super important. And so let's get in the situation. You've been working for a long time on a project and you're doing the finish planing, the last passes before you apply your shellac or oil or whatever it is, and then you start having tear out. And I've seen that so many times during my courses. Students get very nervous and they don't feel at all like stopping for a second and thinking, okay, what's going on? Instead of that, they just keep planing. They get nervous. They will try to, if they get a patch of tear out in some area, they will try and reverse the piece and see how it goes, and then they get patches in other areas, and things get worse and worse, and you get this sinking feeling. And so the first thing you need to do is just stop planing, okay? If you need that, go for a coffee, chill out a little bit, chill down, and then remember this video and the 5 strategies which you can have just written down in a piece of paper somewhere in your workshop. So it's the right time to get a piece of paper, and I'm going to tell you these 5 principles in order of importance. So the most important thing, first of all, is getting a freshly sharpened blade, okay? So freshly sharpened, it doesn't mean sharp enough, it means truly freshly sharpened. And that alone, it's gonna prevent most of the tear out, all right? So let me show you those things in actual action. I have another example here. This is a side of a drawer, which I'm making right now. Maybe you have seen it in previous videos. This is for my level 3 course. And this one has curly sycamore for drawer sides, which is a little bit over the top, really. But yeah, I just like it, and I think it's in keeping with the rest of the piece. And this is curly, meaning the fibers go up and down, up and down, up and down. That's the definition of curl in wood. Okay, so there is no proper actual planing direction here. You could plane this way with this way, and you might get tear out in half the fibers, because they as they go up and down, the planing direction changes very tightly here. So yeah, that's one of those situations in which you really want to avoid tear out. So to show you all of that, I have here some domestic cherry in the raw, and you can see there is also some flame and some curl, and you can actually see the fibers going up and down, particularly here on the edge. I'm gonna just put some alcohol to enhance these chatoyance. So I just, let me see. You can see here all this changing color. It's actually the fibers going up and down. So we're gonna plane through this without tear out. Okay, let me just put it here on the vise. And so I was saying, freshly sharpened blade is the most important part, is number 1 of the 5 strategies, and only that it's going to deal with most of your problems. And so here you can see I have many replacement blades just right here in my drawer, ready for a replacement. That's a very cunning strategy, actually, because this will allow you to not have to stop everything and go and sharpen. I know Alan Peters could have 4 spare blades for his number 7, which actually was his go-to plane. Um, and he would only stop to sharpen them once all 4 of them were dull. So I'm using my O2 waterjet blade here on this dictum plane, and it's ready for work. I just did a couple of strokes before, and I know it's freshly sharpened. So that's number 1. Okay. Number 2 is having a very thin shaving. Okay. I'm checking now. I tell you about this later. I'm checking how close I have the chip breaker to the cutting edge, which is a very important part also. I'm gonna set things in place. This is a ever so slightly cambered blade, which I like to use for correcting squareness in boards, and that's what we're going to be using now. And this light camber allows me to set up the plane in a very efficient way. So now I'm going to check for an even projection of the blade. So I want symmetry here, since I have a cambered blade, meaning an ever so slightly curved edge. I want it to be cutting more on center and progressively less towards the sides. So here at the edge, as you can see, I have no cut at all. If you cannot see it, you can at least for sure hear it, and I can feel it on my fingertips. And this is a great trick by the late great David Chatsworth. So no cut here, and here I start having the very first hint of a cut. On the same way, I'd like to have this a symmetry here. You can see I'm cutting much closer to the edge, meaning I need to do a very slight adjustment, just tapping ever so slightly with the plane hammer. Now it's even a little bit too much. That's a very subtle camber. Okay, now I'm balanced and I'm ready to do the job. So first of all, planing direction here. Everything goes up and down, so I should be able to plane either way. But let's see. It goes in that direction. Okay. This is a little bit of alcohol still. I hope it's gonna be going away very soon. So the first thing I do is to completely retract the blade and get no cut at all. And now I will start advancing until I get the first cut. There it goes. And this is a tip or a strategy number 2. Very important as well, together with number 1. You must take the thinnest possible shaving. That's gonna make a huge difference. Okay? So the thinnest possible shaving with the sharpest possible blade. And those two are the most important parts. And most people fail in one of them. Taking these shavings. You can listen that I'm not taking a full length shaving, but it's coming along pretty nicely already. And eventually I have a kind of a depression here. I have a concavity. So I'm cutting more in the beginning, more in the end. You will hear that now. You see, there is a little kind of a jump. So you just need to be patient, okay? You're gonna need that with thin shavings. And as you can see, I'm already taking a full width, full length shaving, which is rather thin. You could go thinner than that, but in this situation, I don't need it. I'm not having any tear out. And you can see if I had some tear out, you could see some voids here in the shaving. Um, even especially if you have tear out in your surface and you're trying to remove it with a thin shaving, that's going to take a long time because you need to get down to the bottom of those bits that you've left there. And I think that's where most people fail. They try and get a thicker shaving to go faster, and then they get tear out back again. So those two strategies already, they will make a very important uh, improvement in the quality of the surfaces you're leaving. But there is another one, number 3, which is super super important as well, and I wouldn't want to be without it, and that is the chip breaker. Okay, let me tell you what the chip breaker is. I'm gonna just get one here. This is a plain blade with a chip breaker on this side. And this is a feature that it's only uh, in high angle planes. Okay, we're gonna do a completely separate video with high angle and low angle planes or bevel up, bevel down planes. But for now, I want you to see that in this kind of plane, there are actually two components. That would be the blade, okay, and on top of it sits the chip breaker. Chip breaker being a very precisely machined component. So improving your chip breaker is indispensable to get the best possible performance of your hand play. Okay, and I'm gonna be telling you everything about that in the online school of woodworking that we are now setting up, and this is gonna be one of the earliest parts of the courses, hand planing techniques, everything about different kind of planing technologies and so on and so forth, many techniques, and also how to improve your plane and how to get peak performance, whether you have a cheaper plane or a higher quality plane. So the chip breaker, provided that is already very well set and never blunted. Very often manufacturers give you blunted chisels, blunted chip breakers that will give you this accordion shape um, shavings, which I'm sure you're very familiar with these shavings that are like really like so um, very wavy, and this is because they just crash against this blunted edge of the chip breaker and they become this kind of compressed accordion fibers. So the chip breaker wants to be set as close as possible to the cutting edge, just behind it, of course, but as close as possible. And I'm going to show you now how I do this setting. When I say as close as possible, we're talking really about something like 1/10 of a millimeter. Okay, so 4/1000 of an inch for those of you who are working with imperial. And I'm going to show you how I get this setting. There are two ways of doing that. I'm going to just remove the chip breaker in this plane. Okay, always very carefully. And now I'm going to get closer to a light, to a source of light, like a window, and I'm going to catch the reflection of the sky in the flat back of my cutting blade. Okay, so let's get closer to the window. And now what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the reflection of the sky here on the flat back of my plane blade. Okay, so it's a shiny kind of area. Now I'm gonna bring the chip breaker into position with lots of care, lots of love. I've been preparing this chip breaker, so it's a very accurately prepared component, and it's fragile. So now I can see the reflection of the sky here, and as I advance the chip breaker, I can see this reflection becoming a very narrow stripe, and eventually it's going to become just a hair. And this is where I know I'm right there at the closest possible setting available. And this is how you can see that very easily. Now I'm just tightening the screw with my hands, and now I'm gonna just give it a little tweak with a chip breaker screwdriver. Okay, so we're ready. Yeah. And if you come to think about this, getting the chip breaker so close to the cutting edge, it's nearly like raising the working angle, which is one of the most common strategies to prevent tear out. And is the first thing many people think when they have problems. They think, oh, I have to raise the working angle. And as you can see, it's not in the top of my priority list. And I'll explain in a minute why. So instead of a blunted edge, what I have here in my chip breaker is a 45-degree bevel, okay? It comes to a very fine point. And so when I take the first shaving, the wood, of course, it gets cut, and the first shaving is starting to form. And very quickly, it finds a very steep slope. Okay, usually with unprepared chip breakers, what the chip finds, it's this blunted kind of a 90-degree wall against which it crashes. So this is the number 3 strategy in preventing tear out. Get the chip breaker fully prepared, ready to go, and just as close as possible to the cutting edge. Which indeed it is almost like raising the working angle. Okay. So give me a minute just to set the plane again balanced. Yeah, now we have a too thick a shading here and no shading on this side. So I'm just gonna tap very lightly on the protruding side, and now still a bit more. Yeah, and still a bit more. That's a kind of a gross adjustment. So I'm gonna do it with a lever. Yeah. See how we are now. Okay, that's nearly done. And fine adjustments are always, in my opinion, best done with a hammer. I've never had much precision just by using this lever here. To me, it's useful for very gross adjustments. Okay, so let's get back to the planing here. I'm gonna remove all the cut and now start advancing until I get the first thinnest possible cut. Okay, so that's a full width and full length shaving. And let's get on to number 4. Okay, number 4 is the opening you have for the shaving to go through. Okay, this we call it the mouth, and you want a mouth as closed as possible. Okay, and let me explain you why. This way. Okay, imagine this piece of paper is the shaving you are removing. Okay, so as you go with your blade, the shading starts lifting up. And a way to understand tear out is that the shaving or the wood breaks ahead of the cutter as soon as this will start raising up and breaking just ahead of the cutter this way. Okay, so as soon as I have a part of the sole of the blade getting very close to the blade, as you can see, we have some support here when the mouth is closed, or just as slightly open as possible, only to let the shaving go through. And this way I have lots of support here, and the shaving is not able to break apart, okay, to lift up and break apart ahead of the cutter. So that's why having a very closed mouth, it's going to be very, very beneficial, much more than having an open mouth that will leave room for the wood to splinter. So that's number 4, and it's also a very useful one. This, you just fix it by using the screws. You will find that in all manuals. There are some planes, like block planes, which have an adjustable mouth. As you can see here, it opens and closes just by virtue of this lever. And this is very easy. Once you have it set, then you tighten the screw here, and that's all. In this case, this is a bedrock style plane, and it works with a chip breaker screwdriver, and you're using these screws here to advance and retract this whole setup here. The blade, the chip breaker, the cap iron, and the frog here. Everything moves together to get you a very thin opening like this one. As you can see, you nearly cannot see this, and that's the kind of opening I want for fine finishing shavings with no tear out. So if I come in with my flashlight from my mobile phone, you can see that sliver of light. That's the opening, that's the mouth opening, which is as closed as I can possibly have it without any shaving clogging. Okay, so it's my experience that only those 4 strategies will give you perfect results and no tear out in nearly every wood you come to plane, okay? Both domestic and exotic for the most part. Later I'll discuss exceptions, okay? Now, the 5 point, if everything fails, the last thing I would do, and to be honest, I've never had to do that in 10 plus years of woodworking, is raising the working angle, okay? Of course, if you're working with a low angle plane, like as it would be a block plate, then you have no chip breaker, and soon enough you will need to raise the working angle, meaning you have to change the bevel angles here to get a steeper working angle, okay? If you're working with a bevel down plane, such as this one with a chip breaker, some people might tell you, okay, but you're not able to raise the working angle. Actually, you can replace the frog if you like. I've never done that neither. But you could also impose a very small bevel on the flat back of your blade if you need it, if you're doing very specialized work. And you will find that with this method, if you put a very small bevel here, that it doesn't need to be more than 1/4 of a millimeter, you're going to raise the working angle, and you could even go to a 90-degree working angle, and that could be perfectly possible and easy to achieve in that situation. But as I was mentioning, I've never encountered a situation where I actually needed it, and that's why nobody can convince me that the bevel up plane works better for preventing tear out or in any event. Actually, I prefer also bevel down planes like this one, because not only because they have a chip breaker which stabilizes the thin edge as it is very close to the edge. Also, I like them because they're heavier, and this gives lots of momentum, and I'll be discussing that in another video. So that's a very important part as well. Now, there are some exceptions, as I was mentioning. There are some planes that are incredibly abrasive. They might be hard or soft, but that's very different. So soft woods have lots of mineral contents in them, and they can be extremely abrasive. And that you get this especially in very rare exotic timbers. And those I wouldn't just try to plane them. I would just sand them, because as soon as you get a couple of strokes from them, you will find that your blade is completely dull and ruined, and it's just not possible to do that. But that's a fairly rare thing, okay? And I wanted to mention there's absolutely nothing wrong with card scrapers or also with sandpaper, okay? Just a plane will give you a much better finish than a card scraper. If you don't know what a card scraper is this kind of a blade that has a turned hook, and this will never give you tear out. And many people think they need one because it's the only way to deal with tear out. Well, that's not true, as I've just proven. But a card scraper, yes, of course, will leave no tear out, but it will leave a very rough surface, and you could create dimples as you concentrate in some areas and there is no sole to guide you. This will create some unevenness that then shows a lot when you come to the final finishing with shellac, or any glossy or satin finish will show these little dimples very often. So that's why I rarely use them, and I think they have their place, of course, and you can use them if you like. But I find for myself that only a very finely tuned plane is everything I need. Okay, so I hope this was very helpful for you. I hope you give us a thumbs up if you've learned something. Please subscribe to the channel. That's great help, and it helps us to keep offering you more content. And also, please let us know what you like to hear from us, what you want to learn, what topics are interesting to you. So let us some comments, and we'll do our best to explain whatever we can tell you about those things.